Uh-oh.
In her last two fights. Good way hitting him from that way down.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Earlier today, a pleasant surprise. It was announced that Matchroom will be staging a Battle of the Unbeatens on the undercard of the upcoming Pacheco versus Suletsky fight later on this month. Unbeaten Adelaida Ruiz will take on unbeaten Virginia Fuchs for the WBC interim title in the super flyweight division. It's important to note that neither one of these fighters are actually signed to Matchroom. Neither Adelaida or Virginia have a contract with the promotional company, thus it's curious that they decided to use them. Virginia Fuchs sports a professional record of just 3 wins, no losses, and no draws, with 1 recorded knockout. To Adelaida Ruiz, the far more experienced professional of the two that sports a professional record of 16 wins with no losses, 1 draw, 8 knockouts.
Why is Matchroom using girls they don't have under contract?
I'd wager that Eddie Hearn has had 1 or 2 bad experiences with some of the female fighters that he's promoted. Chantel Kimran, Alicia Baumgartner. Think about it. Matchroom got Chantel to all of those alphabet titles, and for that, all she did was complain.
Any notoriety and any accord she amassed in her pro career, she amassed at Matchroom. And for that, all she did was complain, then leave them for Queensbury.
When you think about Alicia's current situation, that her very next fight is on some obscure platform called Brinks.
After that anti-doping fiasco, I just don't imagine that Matchroom was too happy with any of that.
So they may be holding off on just giving fighters contracts, making a commitment to fighters. This looks like a sink-or-swim situation between Virginia Fuchs and Adelaida Ruiz, who are not Matchroom fighters. It looks like a sink-or-swim situation that will allow Matchroom to evaluate whether or not they want to do any more business with these 2 fighters. Now, Adelaida last saw action in July of this year opposite the ring Catherine Ramos, who she beat on points.
Adelaida fought 3 times last year, and she's already fought once this one, so she's been busy and she's been active.
Virginia Fuchs' situation is a little bit more nuanced. Virginia debuted as a professional in April of 2022, 2 years ago, and she's really only fought 2 or 3 times since then in a full-on boxing match. But that doesn't mean she hasn't been keeping busy.
How so?
Well, her last recorded boxing match was against the very experienced and dangerous India Smith in June of last year, but Virginia has actually been spending a lot of time in Team Combat League. That's how she's been keeping busy, and she's participated in Team Combat League events several times this year.
What's Team Combat League?
It's tantamount to tag team boxing, where one team takes on the other team. Each player fights for 1 round. Whatever team piles up more rounds wins a contest.
Something like that.
And that is how Virginia Fuchs has been keeping busy. So even if she hasn't fought in a full 4-rounder, 6-rounder, 8-rounder, or 10-rounder in the last 12 months, she has been fighting, she has been keeping busy. This fight she's about to have is for a WBC interim title. The winner of the fight is in line to fight for the full WBC title against the full WBC champion, Mexico's own Ashley Gonzalez.
There are 4 champions at this weight.
Irma Garcia of Mexico, who's got the IBF. Ashley Gonzalez, who's got the WBC, who I just mentioned. Mizuki Hiruta of Japan. She's got the WBO. And Clara Lescurat of Argentina. She's got the WBA.
4 champions.
There are 4 champions at this weight, and the winner of this fight between Adelaida Ruiz and Virginia Fuchs aspires to become one among them.
The fight.
Preliminary thoughts. I think Virginia Fuchs is a more well-schooled boxer, certainly a more well-schooled amateur than Adelaida Ruiz. But what Adelaida lacks in pedigree, she makes up for in punching power and pro experience, because she has a lot more pro experience, more pro fights than Virginia Fuchs. Virginia is more the boxer, where Adelaida is more the puncher, more the brawler, the bruiser. You may have seen Virginia Fuchs palling around with Michaela Mayer. They go back to their amateur days. That's what Virginia brings to the table, a lot of amateur experience. You can see almost immediately she knows her way around the ring, nicknamed the captain. Virginia is a southpaw, where Adelaida Ruiz is an orthodox fighter. I'd say that Virginia is more athletic, more coordinated, more nimble than Adelaida Ruiz. Adelaida Ruiz is a bit more flat-footed, drawing her power from the ground up. She's a power puncher. Adelaida is. So the edge in power goes to Adelaida. The edge in speed, mobility, quickness, that goes to Ginny. She's the more technical fighter of the two. Slight edge to Virginia Fuchs to win this thing. I know she only has 3 professional fights, but I just feel she has a higher ceiling than Adelaida. I've seen a lot of Adelaida in action, and she's fun to watch. She's good in her own right, but she's a bit more simple. Somebody's O has got to go. We'll talk more about the fight and give it another look as the fight date approaches. In men's welterweight news, you may have heard earlier today that Terence Crawford has now officially vacated his WBO welterweight world title, meaning Brian Norman Jr. has been upgraded from interim to full world champion. He will move forwards as WBA super welterweight world champion and has the WBO interim super welterweight belt. Crawford currently still remains WBA welterweight world champion, but it appears likely he could soon also vacate that belt, meaning Eimantas Stanionis would be upgraded from regular to full world champion, and all of this is expected. We talked about all of this. What the next cycle of welterweight champions is going to look like, that it's going to come down to Brian Norman, Eimantas Stanionis, Mario Barrios, who's already WBC champion, and of course, Jaron Ennis, who's already IBF champion. So there was supposed to be a fight between Teofimo and Brian Norman, presumably for this WBO title, because Teofimo doesn't look to be unifying at 140. So the story was he was going to move up to 147, he was going to fight Brian Norman, but now that doesn't look to be happening. I think it was supposed to go down on the same show that features Michaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan, the show they're now headlining. Originally, I think it was supposed to be Teofimo and Brian in the main event. It's a wrap for that. Now the question is, if Brian isn't fighting Teofimo, who will Brian end up fighting now that he's full WBO champion? Ranked at number 1 in the WBO's ranked standings is Uzbekistan's own, Matchroom's own, Shakram Gayasov. If a fight between Brian and Shakram is ordered, I don't think Matchroom would have much aversion to sending Shakram over to Top Rank for the opportunity. They just sent Sandy to Top Rank. Maybe they'll send Shakram to Top Rank. Ranked at number 2 is Japan's own Jin Sasaki. At number 3 is Karen Chukatsian. You guys know Karen. Karen's the guy that was giving Jaron Ennis fits when they fought. The Ukrainian. France's own standout amateur, unbeaten up-and-comer Suleiman Sissoko is ranked at number 4. David Papat is ranked at number 5. Not a lot of star power in those rankings. Not a lot of somebodies. Just a lot of guys trying to be somebody that haven't gotten there yet. Today's welterweight division pales in comparison to the previous one in terms of familiar names, faces with marquee value. It ain't what it used to be. 154 has a lot more star power, a lot more talent. Comparatively, it's a deeper division than 147 is, which is saying a lot because historically, 147 is the glamour weight. It was. In terms of unification matches that are out there for Brian Norman, Brian is the only welterweight champion on the Top Rank side of things. The IBF title, that's over there at Matchroom with Boots. The other 2 titles, they're over there at the PBC. The WBA title, the WBC title. Thus, even though Brian's been elevated to full WBO champion, the other titles are on other sides of the street. So how is Top Rank going to work that out? And are the unification matches that are there, are they even mouth-watering fights? Are they really? What are we talking about? A Mario Barrios fight and a Eimantas Stanionis fight? I mean, those are good fights, solid fights, but they're not super fights. This is why some people have been calling for Boots to vacate his IBF title and move up, because 154 is a lot deeper than 147. You saw what Eddie Hearn said. He said before Boots moves up to 154 to fight Crawford or anybody else up there, he
He wants him to unify this division. He's staying put.
And I think so is Bryan. Now that he's full WBO champion, I think he's going to try to make something happen there. I don't really know if he can or he will.
But they'll try.
It's a little hard to imagine that Top Rank has any use for a welterweight. They don't have much of a stake in the welterweight division. They don't have much use for a welterweight, even if he is a welterweight champion, outside of the Lopez fight that they were trying to make that isn't happening now.
I don't really know what they're going to do.
They're going to have to do something. And because Brian Norman isn't yet a big draw or a big ticket seller, if there's an opportunity for Brian on some other side of the street, Top Rank might have to consider letting him go because they don't have much use for him.
Nope.
Brian Norman, if you haven't seen him, he's big for the weight. He's a big kid. Good physical dimensions for a welterweight. Some height, some length. He's definitely got power. He battered a then unbeaten Giovanni Santillan from the inside out. He did to Giovanni what Giovanni did to Alexis Rocha.
Beat him at his own game. Beat him from the inside out.
I'd go with Giovanni to beat Mario Barrios. A Montestanionis, that's a more even fight.
And I'd go with Boots to beat all three of them.
And that's the state at the weight at 147. And finally, in men's heavyweight news, as we've spent enough time talking about what might happen, this is happening. Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua. Daniel says, now is my time.
You know, I don't think a lot of people realize he's the reigning champion, the defending champion going into this fight.
For a split second, it looked like the world of boxing was being turned on its head. There was Alexander Usyk, the walking, talking skill set from the Ukraine, the holder of numerous heavyweight titles, the man who bested Anthony Joshua not once but twice, writhing in pain from a body shot delivered by Daniel Dubois. Indeed, the legendary Usyk had been sent to the mat. The referee ruled Dubois' shot a body blow and insisted Usyk take some extra time for himself to recover. It was all very odd.
No, it wasn't.
A few rounds later, Usyk went on to stop Daniel Dubois, adding even more bitterness for Dubois and his team.
I think it was his team that instructed Daniel to go there. No, I'm not crazy. James Ali Bashir spent some time with Usyk in the past. He was in Daniel's corner for that fight, and of course veteran trainer John Charles.
We know what kind of fighter Don likes to train, a rough and rugged fighter that's going to shake things up. He used to train Derek Chisora. You see that starting to rub off on Daniel. That Daniel, fight by fight, is becoming more and more of a brawler, a rough and rugged fighter who likes to press the issue. I think they told him to hit Usyk low.
Of course he's not going to admit that.
I didn't think it was a low blow, said Dubois after all was said and done, and I've been cheated out of the victory. That may or may not be true, but the good news for Dubois is that he once again has a real chance to leave his mark on the heavyweight division. No, he's not fighting Usyk in a rematch. What he is, however, is facing the towering Joshua in a bout for the IBF heavyweight crown. To say there's a lot at stake for each man would be an understatement. By returning from the Usyk loss with back-to-back stoppage wins against Jarrell Miller and Filip Prgovic, Dubois has earned himself another legit crack at glory. Bear in mind, he's already IBF champion. He already has the IBF title. What he's doing in this fight is defending it.
Remember that Usyk gave it up.
He gave it up willingly. He wasn't stripped of it by the IBF, and the IBF never ordered a fight between Daniel and Usyk.
Then why'd he give it up?
I think he was paid to do so. Quite honestly, I think he was given a financial incentive to give up the title so that these two guys could fight for it.
It's what I think.
Defeating the popular Anthony Joshua, however, is no one's easy task. The man has learned from his own defeats, after all, and has arguably become one of the better boxer punchers in the sport, much less the heavyweight division. Focused and determined, Joshua is looking to complete his redemption after those two losses to Usyk 2 years ago. All he needs to do is get back one of those world titles he used to possess and defeat Daniel Dubois when they throw down September 21st at London's Wembley Stadium.
The next installment of Riyadh season, backed by Turkey Al-Sheikh, I think what Turkey will find is that the reception for a boxing match in the UK is a bit better than it is in the US. What we just saw with Crawford and Madrimov,
I think they're going to do better business. Much better business in the UK with this fight than they did with Crawford versus Madrimov. This is a big fight, make no mistake, and it's Matchroom versus Queensberry in the main event. We know that Queensberry, they swept Matchroom.
and the Matchroom versus Queensberry 5 for 5.
Anthony Joshua is now Matchroom's best shot at revenge, though Daniel Dubois doesn't see himself as anyone's stepping stone. Like Joshua, the man takes his business seriously. I'm not here to talk foolishness. The fighter has said on Queensbury's YouTube page, but I want to make a fool out of AJ by knocking him out and putting all the doubters and critics to sleep. This is definitely bigger than the Usyk fight. This is definitely the lion's den, this one. Dubois made it clear that he sees next month's fight as something of a changing of the guard. So he's been the king for a long time, he said of his fellow Brit Joshua, and now it's my time.
Is it though?
Two very good corners in this fight. In Daniel Dubois' corner, you have veteran trainer Don Charles, who likes his fighters rough and rugged and ready to go. In the opposite corner, you have Ben Davison, cerebral fighter that helps Anthony Joshua find that happy medium between his boxing and his brawling. Anthony is actually a bit bigger and a bit longer than Daniel Dubois. He's got longer reach, longer arms.
A little bit taller, too.
I don't know when exactly Daniel's going to turn it on and turn it up, but I get the sense that he wants to crowd Anthony Joshua. He wants to get inside on him and take him out from the inside out, whereas Anthony, he's going to have to move and punch, move and box.
Set him up.
Daniel's coming off of two very solid wins over two unbeaten guys in Jarrell Miller and Filip Hrgovic. But if I'm going with Anthony Joshua to win, it's because of the amount of right hands that Filip Hrgovic was able to land on Daniel. Filip Hrgovic doesn't have the snap on his punches or the power that Anthony has. He's a bit slower too, but if he was able to land that many right hands on Daniel, Anthony will be able to land right hands on Daniel.
So I see it.
I mean, in both of those fights, the Jarrell Miller fight, the Filip Hrgovic fight, yes, Daniel Dubois won, but he took some shots. He took a lot of shots into both of those fights, and those guys don't have the physical dimensions or the gifts, the one-punch power that Anthony has. So if they can touch you, he can touch you. But when he touches you, you won't take it as well.
A fight made possible by Turki Al-Sheikh, who some Americans don't like all of a sudden.
Because he wanted to make Crawford versus Canelo, and now he wants to make Crawford versus Ortiz. They decided...
Oh, they don't like him all of a sudden.
Though I can care less. This is one of the fights on the calendar that I'm looking forward to. Unlike Canelo versus Berlanga that has no sizzle, no intrigue, this does.
If you're more happy to see Canelo Alvarez pounce on an overmatched Edgar Berlanga, be my guest. But this is a better fight than that one.
Made possible by Turki Al-Sheikh, who bridged the gap between long-standing rivals Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. No, without Turki, this wouldn't be happening. While you pretend he's not contributing a lot to the sport.
Go ahead and pretend. The American boxing scene stopped being the life of the party a long time ago.
This fight, the upcoming undisputed light heavyweight title fight between Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol, and of course, Fury versus Usyk 2, as well as Matchroom versus Queensbury 2. I'm looking forward to more of that than anything going on in America right now.
I think Turki Al-Sheikh is finding that out, that the American boxing scene isn't what it used to be.
But that's okay, because the Brits want to rumble, the Brits want to fight. You don't have to twist their arm to put them in a good scrap.